Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Massey. I'm with Burbank Housing. First, I want to welcome you and thank everyone for joining us this evening. We'll get started in a few minutes on our presentation, but first I want to get everyone a chance to get logged on before we begin. On the screen in front of you, you should be able to see the instructions for Spanish interpretation, as well as using the question and answers feature in Zoom. Please familiarize yourselves with these instructions, convert to Spanish interpretation if you need, and we'll get started here in a second. We will be conducting a poll during the presentation, and you will have an opportunity to provide feedback via that poll, as well as the Q&A feature. We'll take in all of the questions during the presentation, and then at the end, we'll provide responses to the questions that we receive. We will give everyone a few minutes to get logged on, and then we'll get started here in a little while. Thank you. Okay, we are a few minutes past 5 o'clock at this point. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to log on to the presentation and is able to see the Zoom screen. At this point, I will ask my team to advance to the next slide and we'll get moving on the presentation. All right, good evening, everyone. Once again, it's great to have you all here. We appreciate your flexibility as we pivoted from an in-person meeting to this virtual format tonight. We want to make sure that everyone is staying as safe as possible in these trying times. So thanks for moving to the virtual format with us. My name is Karen Massey. I am the Senior Project Manager working on behalf of Burbank Housing and responsible for overseeing the project management for this project. Some of you may recognize me from my prior role as the city's housing director, and I'm really glad to be back and have the opportunity to work in housing in Healdsburg once again. Next slide, please. I want to introduce you to our project team, at least virtually. Tonight, I'm joined by several members of the project team, many of whom will present later and you'll have the opportunity to hear from. But in addition to our partner, West Development Ventures, as well as our consulting team, I also want to recognize staff from the city of Healdsburg who is with us this evening, as well as the executive director from Reach for Home, who is here with us this evening. Both the city and Reach for Home are key partners for us in this project. The city owns the property that we are proposing to advance an affordable housing project on. Burbank Housing was actually selected as the qualified developer for this site earlier this year, and we've been working to get our arms around the background of the site and issues related to it and try to come up with a preliminary site plan to share with you. We've also partnered with Reach for Home on this project, and we are intending to provide them first priority on 10% of the units so that they can continue their services providing supportive housing in the community as well. This is actually Burbank Housing's second partnership with Reach for Home, and we're very excited to be able to have the opportunity to partner with Reach for Home again on this project. Next slide, please. I want to orient you guys a little bit to the site itself. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the site. It is 155 Dry Creek Road. It's located between Grove Street and Healdsburg Avenue on the north side of Dry Creek Road, just across from Hotel Trio, and kind of situated in between Plank Coffee and also Big John's Market. The railroad tracks for the future SMART train right away and the new Foss Creek pathway are also immediately adjacent to the site. It is located on the Dry Creek corridor, which I'm sure many of you realize is a key gateway to the city. And we're showing a couple of photographs there on the slide. The bottom slide gives you the perspective of the site from Dry Creek Road looking northwest. And then the top picture is a picture looking across the site at Foss Creek. Next slide, please. So this project offers a unique opportunity to transform what ends up being a very challenging site. The site does contain a number of constraints that dictate how it can be developed and the development potential. Up at the top side of the slide, you can see that the site is adjacent to the SMART railroad tracks as well as the Foss Creek pathway. And then also along the top of the site, you can see that there's a 20-foot wide easement for the Geysers waterline pipeline that impacts the eastern side of the site. The north side of the site, kind of up there in the upper left-hand side of the slide, requires us to provide an emergency vehicle access so that the fire department and first responders can have access through this site to the properties to the north. In addition, and definitely the biggest constraint to this site are the wetlands on the site. You can see in the central portion of the site, there are two wetlands that total approximately 0.57 acres. So a little bit more than a half acre of the site is encumbered by existing wetlands. And then finally, on the western side of the site, which you're seeing at the bottom of the slide, the property is bordered by Foss Creek, and associated with Foss Creek is a 35-foot riparian setback that we're required to stay out of. So these characteristics, and in particular the creek and especially the wetlands, do present some significant constraints on the site and obviously form and shape the development potential and what can be done here. Next slide, please. We really do see this project, given the site constraints, as an opportunity to protect and enhance the natural resources that are occurring out there on the site, but also to do it while we're addressing many of the other communities' priorities that have been expressed. And we all know, we're intimately aware and familiar with the ongoing discussion in Healdsburg about providing housing for our local teachers, our firefighters, and our hospitality workers. The desperate need for increased affordable housing stock and maximizing multifamily and rental housing opportunities. And then also addressing the supportive housing needs of the most vulnerable in our community, in addition to protecting the Foss Creek corridor and the wetlands, and then also enhancing the Dry Creek corridor. Next slide, please. So with both the constraints in mind and also understanding the community's priorities, we've developed a preliminary site plan, which that's the slide in front of you now. It's been a labor of love and a challenge to get to this point, given the constraints. I will share that we started out with a much broader footprint, and in the end, we ended up dramatically consolidating the footprint in order to limit the impacts on the wetlands. So what we've done here is we think we've come up with a preliminary site plan that not only responds to all of the existing site constraints, but also responds to the needs of the community. And in particular, we are maximizing the number of units that are allowed on the site. The proposal here is to develop the site with 58 units in 2 buildings, as you can see, and orienting those buildings around the Dry Creek corridor so that we're really focusing on the corridor and activating the corridor and increasing pedestrian activity along that currently vacant stretch. You can see that a large majority of the site, including the riparian setback area, as well as the wetlands, are being protected and retained. And then because we are planning to impact a portion of the wetlands on site, we do need to mitigate for those impacts on site. So in the site plan, you can see that there are existing wetlands to remain that we will not impact, as well as new wetland mitigation area that we will be creating on site in order to offset the impacts from building the housing. So hopefully we have managed to balance the needs of the community from a housing standpoint and also address the natural resources concerns on the site. Though I think the only other thing that I would add is in addition to the 58 units, we do have 97 parking spaces that have been provided for in the preliminary site plan. You can see that they run along that eastern side of the site and they follow the alignment of the emergency vehicle access that is required, as well as that easement. So with that, next slide, please. With that, I think we'd like to take a community poll and ask for your input on the preliminary site plan. And really our question for you here this evening is, does the site plan balance the protection of natural resources while achieving the community's affordable housing goals? We're hoping to receive your feedback on that question. So Patrick, if you might be able to post that poll at this point. So please go ahead and respond to the poll. Happy to see that our poll is being responded to in Spanish too. That's great. Give it a little bit more time here while the results continue to come in. Looks like the results are slowing down. Okay, great. Well, hopefully all of you can see as well that it does look like from the response we received that the overwhelming majority of you believe that we have been successful in achieving that balance between the natural resources and providing for the housing. So that's great news. With that, I think I will hand it over to the project architect, Rick Williams, at this point, and he will share with you the building design.
Great, thank you very much. Rick Williams, I'm with Van Meter Williams Pollock. We're working with Burbank Housing on this very exciting affordable housing development. We think it's a great site. The fact that you can be between a coffee shop and a great grocery store is really absolutely fantastic. Next slide, please. I'm just bringing you back to the site plan again to get you oriented. Dry Creek Road is on the right. You see the Hotel Trio also across the street for reference. We are along the Smart Railroad track, and the parking was placed along the track to give the fire department access to the back property and also keep the building a little bit away from the eventual rail line, which will have a protective fence between it. But our real focus was to provide an active frontage along Dry Creek Road and really focus that the front building of the two buildings, as this is it's a single building that's separated into two, and it's connected above the first floor with a corridor bridge. But building one faces Dry Creek Road. It has the most of the common spaces, management spaces. It also has the entry lobby along it, and some bike room so that people can spill out from the bike room. They can pick up their bikes and go right to Foss Creek, to the Foss Creek Trail. The building is elevated a little bit from the street to stay out of both the wetlands, but also the floodplain. And it has a nice corner entry, covered arcade with stairs and ramps up to the lobby. And then building two extends back along the parking lot, and at the other end has another lobby to really provide convenience for the residents who are parking maybe a little bit farther back on the site. And then the trash is located in the back, adjacent to the turnaround sports court area that allows trucks to turn around, vehicles to turn around, but also provides for an active play area when not in use as loading. Next, please. This is the ground floor building plan. You can see the building along Dry Creek Road on the right. The pink color are the community spaces. There are a few apartments along Dry Creek as well. But the upper portion, the upper corner, you can see the arcade with the lobby, mail room, and management offices that will kind of oversee and provide surveillance for the residents to assure a safe environment for them, as seeing everyone coming in and out of the building. There's elevators, again, at both ends, but most of the community space is along either Dry Creek Road or on the back of the property spilling out, so they have connection, indoor, outdoor connection, including community room, teen room, laundry facilities, and people can use all those spaces and spill out and sit outside, and that will all be overlooking the wetlands. Next, please. This is an example of some of the community amenity spaces. The main lobby is a two-story space that have a stair going up to the second floor. And then there's also other community rooms, gathering spaces that have kitchens and tables and seating, a teen rooms that will probably include a gaming center, and there'll also be an after-school program associated with the overall development. And then I mentioned the bridge, and these are two examples on the right-hand side of bridges and connectors and other buildings that we've done, very lit, rarely open, and it's a great seating area where you can look towards the entry, you can look towards the wetlands, and really is a fun place for people to gather and hang out in the corridor as well. Next, please. The second floor and above have the elevator lobbies at each end and stairs at each end of the building as well. And then you can see that corridor in the middle where it's labeled corridor is really where that seating would be. And then there's a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. These are well-appointed apartments, and the mix is such that half of the apartments are 2 and 3 bedroom, and the other half are 1 bedroom apartments. Next, please. These are example floor plans that we're showing. They're very close. These are basically the ones we're proposing currently. We may make some refinements, and then they have full kitchens and eating area, living room space. We really focus on storage so that there's plenty of storage for the apartments, and fairly large bedrooms. The 1 and 2 bedroom apartments have 1 bath, and then the 3 bedroom has at least 1.5 bathrooms. You notice in the images, you can see an image of a kitchen. They're modern, contemporary, full kitchens, and the bathrooms and the kitchens will all be either built out as accessible or be adaptable for people that need a greater assistance. So if there's a family member that is in a wheelchair, there are features in every unit or any of the units which would be able to be fitted out easily for their ease of use. Next, please. This is an image of a view of our preliminary design view facing northwest from across Dry Creek Road from above. You can see the parking there in the foreground along the train tracks. And then you can see the frontage, which has a ramp and a stair that goes up, which is really focused on the corner element, which is the entry lobby at each level and an elevator lobby and management offices, et cetera. There's that covered arcade in the front. We've changed the material there to be really a blend of kind of rural and industrial, using simple forms and a blend of materials. The covered walk leads up to the lobby and is really highlighted by that unique form using either metal or vertical siding. And the Dry Creek frontage really has a simple sloped roof in the front, while the back and rear building have flat roofs to maximize their ability to put solar panels and hide any other needed equipment on the roof, so it isn't visually impacting the overall appearance of the development. Next, please. Here's a view, again, up from the air, so it's a little easier. You can see the whole site. We're really excited about the retaining and construction of new wetlands, and we have all our open space along the back portion of the site with play areas for the children, expansions off from the community room spaces, and sports courts, etc. You can see the back looks out onto the wetlands and provides a nice promenade for the residents, as well as active play areas adjacent to the building and over in this circular form, which will really be a fun environment, and looking out on the creek and give us an ability to have some educational programs and information for the residents to really get them connected with the environment they'll be living in. Again, simple forms, bay articulations, same as the rest of the building. We don't change the back of the building design. It's all as equally important. Next, please. Really what you want to know, those are aerial views to give you a sense of the overall site development. Really what you want to know is what is it going to look like from the street along Dry Creek Road, as this is really part of the gateway into the community. In this instance, we're looking across the railroad tracks. You see the hotel on the left-hand side, the vacant property on the right-hand side, and the new bike trail that's just been completed recently. If you can go to the next slide. This shows the building as it's currently conceived. There's a 3-story bay along the front, and that relates to the height of the 3-story bay on the hotel. And then you can see the roof of the hotel is about the same height as our building. And then we have a very unique corner feature at the lobby. So we have a very simple form in blue. We have the bays that articulate the massing that are white. And then we have the corner elements, and at each lobby and the ends of the buildings, a unique element which highlights kind of the gateway feature or the entry feature to the building. Next, please. And from the other side, if you're heading east, just to the left is the coffee, is a Plank Coffee, and you can see the hotel on the right. There's 2 hotels adjacent. So you can see the creek, Foss Creek on the left, and we can see Big John's in the back there. And that's the back of the retail. So if we go to the next slide, this is how the building would look and how the streetscape would look. We have tree-lined streets, new lighting that matches the street frontage along fronting Hotel Trio. So we'll be completing that section of the street, highlighting it from the creek. And then we have a nice landscape setback on the front. And then we have the 3-story bay elements that then cascade back to the building. As you can see, the sloped roof form here well, and then a highlighted special element at the end of the building on this end as well. So those are the two important key views that the city felt were important for us to show the community, as this is really part of the gateway into the community from Dry Creek Road. Next, please. While we think about all of these different technical design pieces and everything, there's a lens which we look through all of this design effort and community building effort, and that's one of sustainability. And Burbank Housing is committed to providing a sustainable development. They're going to, they hold on to the property, retain ownership for many, many, many years. So they're very interested in the long-term sustainability. We will do that through both the selection of the landscape and they focus on water conservation. It's a natural that we're doing resource conservation here. We're very excited about that, and we'll balance that with new renewable energy generation. The design of the homes themselves, looking at natural ventilation, low VOC, and formaldehyde-free materials, as well as focus on stormwater filtration, which is integrated into the site plan as it currently is designed. So we're really excited about that. We haven't decided on whether we're looking at a Greenpoint rated or a LEED certification process, but either of those would be provided a strong, sustainable building development. Next, please. We have a community poll, and if you could put up the question, that would be of help to me. So this question is a little longer than the last one. I like the yes, no. So this is one you can pick various different options to. The question is, does the project design seeks to unify and activate the Dry Creek entry corridor? What design features do you feel or you think would help unify the corridor best? Would it be landmark architectural features, consistent street trees and lighting, consistent with the hotel, etc.? Other consistent materials, such as stone along the low walls in front that replicate what's on the other side of the street, etc.? Or does it need additional consistent directional signage to get you from Foss Creek to the Foss Creek Trail, etc.? Or is there another element or feature that we should consider as we're continuing the design process?
And Rick, as we are watching the results come in, I'll just jump in here and say, we did have a note from one of our attendees that they are unable to participate in the poll. That may be due to the Zoom program that you're using, and perhaps it needs to be updated. However, we would still love to have your participation in the poll. So anyone that can't participate via the Zoom poll function, please feel free to respond with your answers in the Q&A, and we will make sure that your vote gets counted there as well. So thank you.
And it looks like we have a lot of great answers. We appreciate, I'm very excited about people thinking about the street trees and the lighting along the street. Both a blend of important for continuity of materials, as well as some with landmark features. I think that we're talking with the city on directional signage, because we do think that the trail is an important feature as well. So we are looking forward to continuing to work on the design and incorporating these elements and features into it. So we appreciate it very much. An important part of this project is, between the wetlands and just the overall character is really the landscape. So I'd like to introduce our landscape architect, Brett, if you would like to take over, and you'll be able to jump in and give us more information on the landscape for the development. Brett, I'm not hearing you.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Now we can.
Better? Great. Thanks, Rick. My name is Brett Cordenbrock. I'm with Quadriga Landscape Architecture in Santa Rosa and Sacramento. And we're equally as excited to be a part of the Dry Creek team. Perfect. Thanks for this slide. So the landscape approach to the site really seeks to enhance the natural beauty of the surrounding wetland and riparian corridor. We are creating an active, passive, and contemplative spaces for residents that are not necessarily heavy-handed or prescriptive, but more so intended to be informal, lush, and subdued, so to kind of soften the experience and not overwhelm the site's surroundings. As Rick mentioned earlier, the streetscape along Dry Creek Road will feature street trees, street lights, lush planting, kind of mimicking the hotel frontage as well, and offer a filter to and from building number 1 as it connects to the Foss Creek Trail in the east and Healdsburg Ave in the west. The courtyard between buildings 1 and 2 is kind of a pass-through space with boulders, informal seating, benches that kind of recall the creek and wetland beyond. It's more of a kind of an organic kind of form in regards. As you make your way down through that kind of corridor, you end at a top lot, which terminates this pass-through space, as well as some flexible seating is provided for residents to kind of stay, play, and relax. As you move screen left or north into the promenade along building 2, you enter kind of a linear garden for quiet contemplation. You're immediately adjacent to the constructed and existing wetlands, and so we felt like this was a nice kind of space for for quietness and contemplation between the two kind of more active zones. Further north along the promenade, you enter the active zone, which has a kind of a series of large gathering tables, picnic tables, a larger play area for ages 5 to 12, and then as well as kind of a tree grove element that's kind of introduces some informal seating, kind of make this kind of naturalized space within the larger kind of plaza there. A sport court kind of fills out the remainder of the plaza area, as Rick kind of alluded to, in that loading zone, kind of at that north corner of the building. And the site is currently, as you can see, the site is kind of edged with a low wall or low wire mesh fence, a welded wire mesh fence, kind of a very common architectural element in front yards seen around Healdsburg and other areas in Sonoma County. And this is to ensure some safety as well as visual permeability to and from the wetland area. Next slide, please. So as Karen and Rick both mentioned, the wetland is a element that we're definitely looking to highlight and restore and kind of mimic. So our goal in a lot of the kind of planting and edge approaches is to reference the natural ecosystem since it does dominate a vast majority of the site and provide such a beautiful backdrop for the buildings. This natural resource has informed our approach to the creative and kind of imaginative spaces around the development. The site planting will be a mix of native and adaptive plantings, kind of that image on the left, kind of this softened kind of foundational planting, and then softening as it moves into more of the natural plant palette that's out there in the wetlands in the wetland area. Trees and ornamental shrubs will help anchor the site and provide some shade and visual interest. And we're continuing to work with our environmental team, Jane Valeris, to ensure that the wetland is planted with native sedges, rushes, annuals, and trees to kind of enhance the current ecological matrix on the site. Next slide, please. This slide, we've got a few images of some of the kind of the site character and some of the spaces that we're trying to create, as well as some of the furnishings and play area offerings that we're currently exploring. Top left image is just a grove of kind of large trees and shrubs, similar to that kind of grove area, that informal grove spot that I was talking about in the northern part of the plaza and the site. Top center and the bottom right are some benches and furnishings for gatherings, as well as those contemplative kind of spaces. Top right images is an idea we're exploring for the play areas, not something that is heavy on the equipment necessarily, but more taking the shape of you know, these mounds and the topography, as well as using the idea of some natural-ish types of materials that kind of lend themselves well to the context. And we've also got you know, a couple images of kind of the wall and fencing condition adjacent to the wetland, and kind of edging out the site. So yeah, so next slide. So I think we're going to do a community poll on this one as well. The question to kind of answer here is, you know, which outdoor amenities are most likely to be used at Dry Creek Commons? And I'm not seeing the poll kind of actively. So if anyone else is, that can kind of react to what we're seeing in terms of feedback.
Sure.
That'd be
It
great.
mentions sports court, community room, teen room, play areas, and outdoor seating.
And the results are coming in now, Brett.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened on that one, but thank you.
Yeah. Give it a few minutes for the results to come in.
I love instantaneous gratification.
It is great to see the response in real time. It looks like play areas and outdoor seating are coming in as amongst the features that were likely to be used the most.
Clearly, the teens aren't on this Zoom call.
Does not appear so.
If they had known we were designing a room for them, they would be all over it.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks everyone for your feedback on the poll question related to the community amenities, the outdoor community amenities. We appreciate that. I think at this point, we will move on to the next slide. Great. So we also wanted to share a little bit with you about the project affordability and income levels as far as households and their eligibility to apply for and live in this project. The project will be affordable to households earning between 30 and 60% of the area median income in Sonoma County. In plain words, that means that the average annual income for folks living in the community would need to be between roughly $34,000 and $69,000. And that's going to fluctuate depending on income and number of individuals in your household. Monthly rent for these units, depending on the size of the unit as well as income, will range anywhere from $595 a month to $1,729. These are estimated numbers based on 2021. Every year, the numbers get adjusted based on the adjusted area median income. So these numbers will fluctuate a little bit, but this kind of gives you a sense of how these units would land and the income required in order to be eligible to live in one of these units. We have also given you kind of a preliminary idea of how we're envisioning spreading the units as far as percentage of income. You can see that a number of the units will be down in the low income category at 30% or so. Those include the units that will be set aside for Reach for Home to provide their supportive housing services out of. And then the income limits increase from there. Next slide, please. Thank you. In addition to the housing and the community amenities, Burbank Housing as well as Reach for Home will be partnering together to provide services and resources to the residents that live within the community. We wanted to share with you the list of services that are typically provided in our communities. Burbank coordinates with its resource partners to provide after-school programming, food distribution, health and wellness classes, financial literacy, rental assistance, and access to public benefits. And then, of course, Reach for Home also provides a wide range of support services, including case management and wraparound services for their clients. In addition to granting Reach for Home the access to 10% of the units, we are also partnering with them to provide resources and locations on site in order to provide support services so that they will be fully integrated as a partner into the community. Anyone interested in applying to live in this project, in these units, are welcome to submit your name to our interest list. We have an email set up. It's info@burbankhousing.org, or you can call us at the number shown on your screen and we can get you on the interest list for this project. And income and eligibility will be determined through your review of income and assets at a later date. At this point, we're really just soliciting interest for people to be put on a waiting list. Next slide, please. So all of this project information, as well as your ability to submit more comments on what you've seen and heard and learned about tonight, can be provided at the Burbank Housing website. We've provided that link on the screen in front of you, so please feel free to go to that link, review the materials, and also provide any comments. There's an email address that has been set up for you to provide comments. And the next steps on this project, we are going to it's not done yet, we're still going to do Q&A, but we are going to take the comments and the feedback that you have given us this evening, which has been very helpful, and incorporate that into the project design, refine it further in anticipation of submitting it to the city for them to process our application. And then at some point, we do not have a date established yet, there will be a planning commission workshop that will be held on the project to review the project further and solicit further input from the community. So we're also providing at the bottom of this slide, this is my contact information. You can email me or call me directly for more information about the project. And then of course we have our contact information for our partners at the City of Healdsburg as well that you're welcome to reach out to. Okay, next slide, please. So that concludes our presentation and takes us to the questions component of the presentation, which I just wanted to say that I'm very pleased to see that our turnout is as high as it is at last count, which I'm not sure has been updated first.
44, I think.
44, yeah, I had 39, so 44, that's great, thank you. I'm glad everyone was able to attend. So looking at the questions, there's a question here from Janice. Thank you for your question, Janice. And it pertains to the number of units and the provision of providing housing for teachers and first responders, people in low-income jobs. And she expresses a concern that there won't be any units left for the unhoused. To clarify that for you, Janice, I apologize. Maybe I was not clear in the way I presented that earlier. We are planning to set aside 10% of the units, so probably about 5, for Reach for Home to have first priority for and provide housing for their clientele and provide supportive services to them. The remainder of the units will be open to the public at large. And we anticipate and hope that those will be our local residents who are in need of housing. And in particular, those folks that we know historically have had a hard time getting housing in Healdsburg, like our hospitality workers and our first responders. So hopefully that answers your question. We have a question from Bob related to the height of the structure on Dry Creek Road and whether or not that can be 3 stories. So Rick Williams, perhaps would you like to walk us through a little bit of the process that we went through to kind of refine the site plan as it relates to the wetland impacts and how we arrived at a 4-story structure on this project?
Sure, thanks. Our original design concept was actually 3-story buildings, 5 or 6 of them scattered around the site, with the parking in similar configuration it is now. So we then, as we started really evaluating and getting an update on the wetlands, which grew over time, we looked to see whether or not we could mitigate offsite or on-site. And as it was determined that there was no place to mitigate offsite, we needed to do all the mitigation on-site. So this is a very delicate balance between maximizing the number of affordable housing units and creating all the wetlands we needed to actually create a development footprint. So in doing this, we have tried to keep the building as low as we could, but at the end of the day, both buildings are at 4 stories currently. We weighed the idea of possibly doing a 3-story building in the front and a 5-story building in the back, but we felt that the 5-story building in the back would be much more visually impactful, as we have the smaller of the 2 buildings in the front. And then we're working architecturally to kind of keep as I mentioned before, keep a datum at 3 stories that matches the hotel. And then if you notice, the ridges of the gables on the hotel building are about the same height as the building here. So we're trying to keep a delicate balance between how many units, trying to maintain and maximize the number of units on the site. It's one of the last resources the city has for providing affordable housing. So to maximize that while also trying to work very diligently to fit in with the overall character of the area. And we will continue to look at that.
Thanks, Rick. Connor, thanks for your question. Connor's question is with regard to the SMART right of way and consultation with SMART as a part of this project. Connor, hopefully from the site plan, you can see that the right of way and the railroad tracks in particular were a big consideration for the site plan. Obviously, all of the development along that eastern edge of the property has been backed off from the railroad tracks and the water line easement and will help with noise attenuation and issues interior to the units. And so yes, the SMART right of way has been considered as part of this project. And then certainly once the application is submitted to the city, I'm sure the city will undertake a consultation on their part once the application is in place. Okay. There's a question about parking and the ratio of 1.7 parking spaces per unit. And the suggestion was a a ratio of 3 spaces per unit. So Rick, perhaps you would like to share a little bit about the evolution of parking on this site. And then I can also share some information about parking management as it relates to permits and ensuring that there's no overflow parking onto the street.
So what we've attempted to do here is again, it's a balance between the amount of wetlands, the building footprint, and the parking. We've already heard there was a concern about the height of the building, so we're also trying to keep it low as well. There's also acoustic issues around wanting to keep the building away from the train track, as the trains will eventually flow through there, we hope. So what we were doing in balancing that was trying to maximize the number of parking spaces along the railroad track, providing access to the back of the site for the fire department to get through the site. We have a very tight building footprint, and what we're doing is basically providing one parking space for each 1-bedroom unit and 2 parking spaces for or 1.5 and 2 parking spaces for the 2s and 3s. 2 is our goal, and then some visitor parking as well. And we do have accessible spaces, and we have some spaces that are being wired for electric vehicles, either incorporated immediately or in the future. So it is a delicate balance. The state requirement is a little bit lower than for affordable housing, is actually a little bit lower than what we find, and we've what we have provided here. And we feel that given the location, we didn't want to underpark, but we felt that this was kind of the right threshold for parking on a site such as this. And it's pretty typical of other parking that's in a similar location, similar around amenities, and similar family-oriented development. So this is our best evaluation as to what we feel is the appropriate level of parking. I know some people would like more. We did look at the idea of parking podium. It would be, instead of 10 or 15,000, $20,000 a space, it would be $50,000 or $60,000 a parking space to build a podium. And then we'd be having to address the issue of having an even taller building on the site, because it would mean another story of parking underneath the building. So it's a delicate balance, but we feel we've met what we believe is the appropriate amount of parking for these number of units and type.
Thanks, Rick. The only thing that I would add to that is that parking was specifically an issue that we spent a lot of time working on as part of this design. Maybe the second most time-consuming thing beyond the wetlands issue. And when we originally designed this, we were probably, I'd say, 8 to 10 parking spaces shorter than the 97 that we're presenting here today, and you're seeing here today. And so we were able to, before we actually shared this with the public, we were able to eke out 8 to 10 more spaces. And that's what you're seeing in front of you today, which I think does help a lot. And again, we have earmarked visitor and loading spaces in order to ensure that there is adequate spaces for folks that are just coming and going to the property and don't actually live there. Our management staff is well versed in dealing with parking management and making sure that parking is, available and adequate, doesn't impact our neighbors. And we have a resident manager that lives on site in all of our communities. There will be a resident manager that lives on this site and will be responsible for actively managing parking. We are already discussing mechanisms for managing parking, including issuing permits to residents, making sure that only residents with permits are parking in the designated spots. We are discussing the potential for ongoing monitoring. Sorry, I already said that. Limiting the number of cars allowed per unit, like Rick mentioned earlier, the leases would specify that only one car is allowed for a 1-bedroom unit and 2 cars allowed for 2 and 3-bedroom units. So managing parking in that way, and making sure that the leases and parking addendums specify those requirements and setting them forth in the community policies. So we acknowledge that parking is something that does need to be managed, and we want to make sure that it is managed well so that we have a livable community, that our neighbors are not impacted by any kind of parking issues, and that our residents want to stay, because if they don't feel like they have enough room to do what they want to do, then they're going to want to move on. So we really feel it's in everyone's best interest to make sure that the parking issue is adequately addressed. Thank you for that question, Carolyn. Mark has a question about the sidewalk width on Dry Creek Road. Rick, can someone from your team answer that question?
Yeah, I think, I don't have it off the top of my head. It's, I believe it's a 6-foot sidewalk. It's per the city standard. It's a combination of the sidewalk and the landscape, and it'll match the city standard that's across the street as well.
Great, thank you. Carolyn is expressing a concern about making sure that the siding and the paint quality are high quality, as well as the landscaping, so that everything is maintained and looks good for years to come in the future. We share that concern with you, Carolyn, and have that in mind as we will be picking our materials for the project. Thank you for that comment. Brett, this one is for you. There was a question about water usage as it relates to the landscaping, and what were you doing from a drought consideration standpoint, the kinds of species and trees that are being planted, that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah. So we'll, as we know, there's, we're in the middle of a drought, and there was, I believe, a moratorium on any new planting in Healdsburg this summer. I think it might even still be going on. So yeah, so we have to balance the aesthetic with what will remain hardy and what will require only low amounts of water, and we'll have to strictly adhere to the city's water use requirements and the WELO requirements, and everything that we usually specify and is baked into all of our projects is intended to monitor the water use, is intended to control it as best as possible with various sensors and things like that to ensure that it is a high efficiency system. In terms of the recycled water, I think that's something, I don't believe at this point we're using recycled water, but maybe that's something we can discuss, or Karen, if you know. We haven't really got into the details of the utilities quite yet, but that's definitely something that we can look into, or at least broach with the city if that's nearby and feasible. So
Thanks, Brett. Rick, just for your FYI, we did get a vote for the teen room in the Q&A.
Okay.
So there's another vote for the teen room.
We just got to get more teens to show up at these community meetings. That's what we need.
That's right. That's right. Jaime provided the great feedback that it would be nice if we had some outdoor covered areas in our landscape areas to accommodate families while we wait for the trees to grow in. Thank you for that comment, Jaime. There's a question about adding a walkway along Foss Creek for families to use as a walkable trail. That's another great question from Jaime. Jaime, you are probably aware that the city just completed the Foss Creek pathway, the leg between Dry Creek Road and up to the community center. So we are very fortunate that this project will benefit from that pathway extension, and it's already in place. It's kind of ready and waiting for us to utilize as soon as we can get this project approved and out of the ground.
We did have a preliminary concept. Brett had a great idea of kind of having a kind of educational walk along the creek. It didn't get past the the setback and the requirement for us to stay away from the creek, that the biologists team and others that are concerned about the creek's hardiness as well. So that was an idea that we had initially, but we weren't able to maintain that as it's considered too sensitive a habitat.
Yeah, we've already met with the resource agencies, the environmental agencies, like Fish and Wildlife, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Water Quality Control Board on the project. We wanted to make sure that the project design could be permitted and allowed under their purview and jurisdiction. And that was one of the points of feedback that they provided to us, was that the riparian setback in particular, in addition to the wetlands, is very sensitive. And the more avoidance and minimization of impact that we could do, the better off they thought we would be. So especially with the construction of the Foss Creek pathway that the city just completed, we decided to remove that amenity from the project site. There is a question here about how do we ensure that these homes are reserved for local residents and not for folks from out of town? Bonnie or Annie, I'm gonna lean on you guys a little bit to answer this question. Bonnie and Annie work in our property management department, and they are responsible for marketing our project sites, as well as identifying tenants and placing tenants. And I know Burbank Housing does a significant amount of local advertising and utilizing our existing partners within the community. We invited Corazon this evening to join us as they're one of our major partners. The city is a major partner. Gen H is also a major partner. So we really utilize and rely upon our local means of advertisement as a main way of ensuring that we are housing our local residents to the extent possible. There are fair housing laws that we have to adhere to, but that is one of the ways that we're able to ensure that at least the information gets out to local residents first. Annie, Bonnie, I don't know if there's anything you would add to that.
No, you covered it, Karen. That's exactly how we do it. We do heavy marketing towards that local area.
Thanks, Annie. And while I have you, Annie, can you respond to pets? Will these units be pet friendly?
No, we have a no pet policy unless it is a service animal or companion animal. So the answer is no. I mean, they can have fish, they can have little, guys in, hamsters and that kind of thing. But as far as cats and dogs, no.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Annie. A question from Mark about any secure bike parking. Rick, do you want to talk about the secured indoor bike room?
Yeah, we have a large bike room, and we're going to have double level storage of the bikes in the plan that's just off of the lobby. There's an exterior door and an interior door, so you can enter. It'll be a secured bike that'll have both surveillance as well as key fobs. So you can access it from inside. There'll be, we don't have the layout there yet, but there'll be bikes stored there. They'll be able to be locked and stored in the room. And then they'll also be able to gain access directly out the door that goes directly down the ramp and right to the street and right to the Foss Creek Trail if you so choose. So we think that's something that we've been focusing on a lot, is to kind of maximize the bike parking there. We'll have other bike parking at the entry of the building for visitors as well. But we're focused on keeping the bikes out of the elevators and in the bike room and on the trails.
Thanks, Rick. And while we have that ground floor plan up, there was a question about where the Reach for Home office would be located. The Reach for Home office will be co-shared with our resident services department. So you can see on the ground floor plan on the building that spaces on Dry Creek Road. There's an office in there. And that will be space that is co-shared with Reach for Home. And they can operate their services out of that space. Looks like we are making our way through the majority of the comments. Thank you to Councilwoman Kelly, who reminded me that there is a local preference ordinance that the city of Healdsburg City Council has passed that prioritizes housing for folks who live and work in Healdsburg. So that's another boost to getting local folks housed. And then if anyone has any other questions that they want to log in, it looks like the majority of the questions have been responded to. As far as the $1 million question, when is this project going to be done? The next steps for us, I mentioned earlier, we will take this valuable input that you've provided here tonight, further refine our drawings, prepare our application for submittal to the city. We are hoping that we can work hard and fast with city staff in order to get the application processed as quickly as we can, hopefully by the beginning of summer. That is a pretty aggressive schedule. My friends at the city are probably cringing as I share that information. And then we would move into doing the more specific design of the infrastructure. So should have thought about this before this question.
I'll say 6 months for approvals, a year for permitting, and then somewhere around 18 months for construction. If we're really, really, really fast, that's 3 to 3.5 years, right?
Yeah, so probably sometime around 2025. Yeah.
And that's pretty lightning quick.
Yeah, it is. We understand the need for the housing and the urgency in bringing it on board. And so we are actively coordinating with staff even ahead of our application submittal to try to get as many things worked out as we possibly can in order to streamline the process once it is submitted to the city. So I see there is a question about washers and dryers in each unit. There is a common laundry room. If we want to go back to that floor plan, we can show that there's a common laundry room.
Yeah, there will not be washers and dryers in each unit. There'll just be a common laundry room with washers and dryers. It's at the lower right-hand corner in the pink there, and that'll have ample washers and dryers for the complex. And it'll also have access to the community room and access outdoors. So if someone is doing their laundry there, they'll also be able to step outside and enjoy the outdoors there as well.
Great, thanks, Rick. Okay, at this point, I will do a last call for questions and remind everyone that your questions need to come through the Q&A feature. So we will wait a few minutes.
Karen, there was a question that we could put the poll results up for a longer time, and I can do that. I can just show what was voted on if people just kind of want to take a look at that. We won't like reopen the polls, but if people want to see.
Yeah, the other thing that we can do, Patrick, is I would direct folks back to that website. If we can go back to the slide that shows the project website, I'll direct you back to that website where you can review the project materials, and we can put the poll results up on that website so that you can see them there. And then again, that website also has the ability for you to be able to send us an email and provide us with any additional comments or further thoughts that you might have if something comes up as you're looking at the project in further detail.
Is there a question Efren's going to answer live? I'm seeing a note under Guadalupe Paniagua's question.
I let Efren know that if you wanted to answer the question live in audio. he's doing that right now. It's in the
Oh, okay.
Spanish audio
Sure.
interpreter channel. So
Okay.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, well, Patrick, do we have a total attendee number? I'm pleased with the number of folks that were able to attend this evening. I'm cautiously optimistic it's more than we would have seen had we done this in person. So I appreciate all of you making time to pivot to a virtual format and joining us tonight and providing us with your feedback. It's been very helpful and will help us as we refine our project application further and prepare for submittal to the city. So with that, unless anyone else from the team has anything to add, I think we will sign off for the evening.
We just appreciate you all coming.
yeah, we topped out around like 46 people in total at its peak, and that was pretty much sustained up until Q&A time. But there's still, 31 people, 31 attendees here, and so I think that's a really good sign. And I think you're right that we get more feedback with low barrier to entry things like virtual meetings, so everyone can participate and still stay safe. So thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. Really appreciate it.
Stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Agreed. Thanks, everyone. Take care.